As your cloud network grows, how do you connect each VPC without the headache of setting up a mountain of VPNs? And don't get me started about the performance overhead. Well, there's a brilliant feature I'd like to introduce to you to save you from all of that: VPC Peering. Stay tuned. As a very hand-waving explanation, cloud providers build their network with a series of data centers, which they position around the world in strategic locations. Since there's already internet topography, they can rely on the public internet to deal with the connections between these data centers without having to do too much additional lifting. Which is fine, but introduces a large problem of security for your data. Any content from the public internet is vulnerable to all sorts of behavior, not to mention the performance issues. Which is why corporations utilize virtual private networks, VPNs, and virtual private clouds, VPCs. These allow customers and employees to securely access cloud resources despite being on the public internet. Now, as your cloud footprint grows and your team complexity grows, one thing that starts to happen is something called VPC islanding. That is, as you start to enable more data center regions to be used by your service, you start to get more and more complexity overhead to bootstrap, manage, and maintain these VPCs in each of your regions. Thankfully, Google Cloud has an answer for this headache. By default, all VPCs in Google Cloud are global, meaning you don't need to set up a VPC for each region, which is pretty nice. You get to build it once and move on. But this doesn't work for every organization. Some structures need more fine-grained control over VPC deployment, effectively needing to redeploy different VPCs across different regions for isolation purposes. And for this, we need to set up VPC peering. This is useful in cases where you have several network administrative domains. For example, you might have a VPC for the finance department and another for the accounting department. The finance department needs access to all the resources that are in the accounting department, and the accounting department needs access to all the resources in the finance department. Or imagine that you have two VPCs connected via VPC peering, and you'd like to reach both of them from an on-prem network with a single VPN. This is a very common use case, as many managed services in GCP use VPC peering, including Cloud SQL. Behind the scenes, VPC peering uses our global virtual network backbone to create a connection by allowing networks to exchange routes. It isn't a gateway or a VPN connection and doesn't rely on a separate piece of hardware, so that there's no single point of failure or a bandwidth bottleneck. Let's walk through setting up VPC peering. What we're doing today is creating VPC peering so a WordPress deployment in one network can communicate privately with a MySQL deployment in another network. In this project, I have two VPCs, VPC1 and VPC2, with non-overlapping IP ranges, and I want to set up peering between them. I've also deployed a WordPress and MySQL instance in each VPC respectively. To create a peering connection between the two VPCs, head to the VPC peering page and click the Create Connection button. Click Continue, then enter a name for the peering connection and select the source and destination networks. This one is from VPC1 to VPC2. While that's creating, repeat the above process and create a second peering connection, this time reversing the source and destination networks, VPC2 to VPC1. Once created, the two networks will automatically connect to each other, and you'll see a green check mark confirming peering is active. Over on the routing page, you can see it's automatically created routes between the two networks, and we now have a full mesh topology. Once the networks are connected, the next step is to configure the firewall to enable traffic between them. For security reasons, you should only allow access to the specific ports and from trusted source IP addresses. I've already created a firewall rule that allows TCP access from the WordPress network to the MySQL instance on port 3306. The next step is to ensure that the deployments in the two VPCs are able to communicate with each other. At the time of peering, GCP checks to see if there are any subnets with overlapping IP ranges between the two networks or any of their peered networks. If there is overlap, there's routing issues and peering can't be established. I'll try to connect to the MySQL instance from the WordPress instance. Here, I've connected to the WordPress instance using SSH. After entering my root username and password and the private IP of the WordPress instance, I can run the command to view all available databases and confirm that the connection is successful. And that's it. We can confirm VPC peering is established and the two instances in the different VPCs are communicating over private IPs. As you can see, VPC peering gives you security, performance, and manageability. To learn more, check out the documentation linked below. Stay tuned for the next episode. And remember, optimizing your network means freeing up your bandwidth.